On July 30, 2025, a landmark decision was handed down by the U.S. Supreme Court. In a move that sent shockwaves through Washington and beyond, the court blocked the Trump administration's sweeping tariff plan, halting a policy that had dominated headlines and divided lawmakers for years. This ruling shook the very foundations of American trade policy, signaling a dramatic shift in how the nation approaches its economic relationships with the rest of the world. By stripping the executive branch of its power to unilaterally impose tariffs, the court ended years of uncertainty for businesses and consumers. For the first time in decades, the authority to shape trade policy was clearly rebalanced, returning significant power to Congress and ensuring greater oversight and debate. For American families, this decision could mean real changes at the checkout counter. The prices of everyday goods, electronics, clothing, groceries, may soon fluctuate as tariffs are lifted or renegotiated. Parents shopping for back-to-school supplies, or families planning their weekly grocery trips, could see their budgets stretch a little further, or face new uncertainties as markets adjust. Companies that spent years restructuring their supply chains to adapt to unpredictable tariffs must now pivot once again. Some may find relief, while others face new logistical challenges. Global markets too are bracing for a new era as investors and trading partners try to anticipate the next moves from Washington. America's allies and rivals are left to reconsider their strategies. As the U.S. redefines its role in global trade, foreign governments and multinational corporations are recalculating their own policies, seeking new alliances, and preparing for a period of adjustment and negotiation. The Supreme Court's decision is more than just a legal ruling. It's a powerful statement about the balance of power between the president and Congress. It reaffirms the system of checks and balances at the heart of American democracy, reminding the nation that no single branch can act without accountability. Small business owners, many of whom joined the fight against the federal government in court, now face a new and uncertain landscape. Some hope for relief from burdensome tariffs, while others worry about increased competition or shifting regulations. For these entrepreneurs, the ruling is both a victory and a challenge, as they navigate the evolving rules of the marketplace. The outcome of this case will shape not just the future of trade, but also the very nature of presidential authority. It sets a precedent for how far executive power can reach and how the Constitution continues to guide the nation's most critical decisions. As the dust settles, every American, whether a worker, a business owner, or a consumer, has a stake in what comes next. The conversations happening in living rooms, coffee shops, and boardrooms across the country reflect the uncertainty and hope that this new chapter brings. The court's ruling will ripple through the economy, influence international relations, and test the principles of American democracy. Economists, politicians, and world leaders alike are watching closely, knowing that the effects of this decision will be felt for years to come. This is just the beginning of a new chapter in U.S. trade policy, a chapter that will be written by lawmakers, businesses, and citizens alike as America charts its course in a rapidly changing world. The roots of this Supreme Court decision trace back to President Trump's campaign promise to rewrite global trade rules and put America first. From the very beginning of his presidency, Trump made it clear that he believed the existing trade system disadvantaged American workers and industries. He argued that decades of free trade agreements had hollowed out U.S. manufacturing and allowed foreign competitors, especially China, to gain an unfair edge. Trump's administration used tariffs, taxes on imports, as a primary tool to counter what it called unfair trade practices, especially by China. The tariffs were designed to protect American jobs, revive domestic industries, and pressure trading partners to negotiate better deals. The administration also targeted steel and aluminum imports, arguing that cheap foreign metals threatened the survival of key American industries. The legal basis for these sweeping tariffs was Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, a Cold War-era law allowing the president to impose tariffs if imports threatened national security. This provision, rarely used in the past, suddenly became central to U.S. trade policy. Trump expanded the definition of national security to include economic security, a move that sparked immediate controversy and a wave of legal challenges. Critics argued that this broad interpretation gave the president too much power and bypassed Congress's constitutional authority over trade. The U.S. imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of goods from China, the European Union, Canada, and Mexico. In response, those countries retaliated with their own tariffs, targeting American exports like soybeans, whiskey, and motorcycles. The resulting trade war hurt American exporters and farmers, leading to uncertainty and financial losses across many sectors. U.S. companies dependent on imported materials and products sued the government, arguing that only Congress has the constitutional authority to regulate commerce and levy taxes. They claimed the president had overstepped his legal bounds, putting their businesses at risk. Lower courts issued mixed rulings, with some siding with the administration and others finding the tariffs unlawful. This patchwork of decisions deepened confusion for businesses and policymakers alike. Some judges deferred to the president's broad authority in matters of national security, while others questioned whether trade deficits or economic competition truly posed a security threat. The debate highlighted the tension between executive power and legislative oversight. The high stakes and conflicting lower court decisions made Supreme Court review inevitable. The business community, lawmakers, and international partners all watched closely, knowing the outcome could reshape global trade. The case became a major test of presidential power in a globalized world, raising questions about how much authority the executive branch should have over international commerce and economic policy. The court's decision would determine not just the fate of Trump's tariffs, but also set a precedent for the limits of executive authority in shaping America's economic future. The ruling would echo far beyond trade, influencing the balance of power between the branches of government for years to come. On July 30, 2025, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that the executive branch exceeded its authority under Section 232. The majority opinion stated that national security cannot be used as a catch-all justification for major economic policies. The Constitution gives Congress, not the President, the power to regulate foreign commerce. The court rejected the administration's broad interpretation, especially as tariffs targeted close allies. The dissent warned the decision could limit the president's flexibility in foreign policy, but the majority's view now stands. The ruling dismantles the Trump tariff plan and resets U.S. trade policy. The Supreme Court's decision triggered fierce reactions in Washington. President Trump condemned the ruling, vowing to fight on and accusing the court of undermining his authority. Congressional leaders who opposed the tariffs celebrated, calling it a victory for constitutional checks and balances. Some Republicans echoed Trump's outrage, while others saw the ruling as a chance to return to more predictable, Congress-driven trade policy. Democrats seized on the decision as proof of executive overreach. The fallout is reshaping the political landscape ahead of the next election. The debate over trade and presidential power is now front and center for voters. For American families, the end of tariffs could mean lower prices on imported goods. Businesses, especially small ones, welcome relief from higher costs and supply chain chaos. Some, like a hardware store owner in Ohio, can now lower prices and rehire staff. But domestic industries once shielded by tariffs like steel and aluminum face new competition and uncertainty. A steelworkers union warns of vulnerability to subsidized foreign imports. The ruling brings stability and predictability for most businesses, ending years of policy whiplash. Companies can now plan for the future with greater confidence. The long-term impact depends on how Congress and the administration respond. For now, the immediate effect is a more stable environment for growth and investment. The Supreme Court's decision sent ripples through global markets and foreign capitals. The EU and Canada welcomed the ruling, hoping for improved trade relations and a return to rules-based commerce. Stock markets rallied, anticipating a boost to global trade and corporate profits. The US dollar fluctuated as investors weighed the long-term impact. China's response was cautious. Officials said they would watch US actions closely before changing their stance. Years of trade war have left deep mistrust, and rebuilding relationships will take time. Developing nations saw hope for a more stable, predictable trading system. Many called for renewed US engagement with the World Trade Organization. The decision is seen as a step toward fairer, more equitable global trade. But the world is watching to see if the US truly changes course. Legal experts across the country are calling the recent Supreme Court ruling a true landmark for the separation of powers in the United States. Many see it as a pivotal moment that could reshape the balance between the branches of government for years to come. The decision has sparked intense debate in legal circles, with scholars poring over its implications for both current and future administrations. Professor Elizabeth Warren, a prominent voice in legal academia, noted that the court's decision strongly reaffirmed Congress's constitutional authority over trade and taxation. She emphasized that this ruling sends a clear message. Major economic decisions, especially those affecting millions, must be debated and decided by elected representatives, not unilaterally by the executive branch. The decision is widely seen as a check on decades of expanding presidential power, particularly in the realm of foreign policy and international trade. By drawing a line, the court has reminded the nation that even the president must operate within the boundaries set by law. Still, some scholars caution that the ruling is relatively narrow in scope. The president retains significant trade authority under other existing laws, but now must provide clear justification for its use. This requirement for transparency and accountability is being hailed as a step forward by many, though some worry about potential loopholes. On the economic front, most economists agree that the tariffs in question have hurt U.S. consumers and businesses by raising prices and disrupting supply chains. Their removal is widely seen as a win for economic efficiency, potentially lowering costs for families and helping businesses compete globally. Nobel laureate Paul Krugman went so far as to call the tariffs a self-inflicted wound, arguing that they did more harm than good to the American economy. He and others believe that rolling them back is a necessary step toward restoring economic stability. However, not everyone is celebrating. Some experts warn that the transition away from protectionist policies will be challenging for certain communities, especially those that briefly benefited from the tariffs. For workers and small towns that saw a temporary boost, the adjustment could be painful. Dr. Michael Hicks, a leading labor economist, argues that instead of relying on tariffs, the U.S. should focus on developing better policies to help workers adapt to a changing global economy. He stresses the need for proactive support, not just reactive measures. Investment in education, technical training, and workforce development is now more important than ever. Preparing workers for new industries and technologies will be key to ensuring long-term prosperity. Ultimately, the ruling is being seen as a call to action, a demand for smarter, more future-focused economic policy that balances growth, fairness, and the needs of American workers in a rapidly changing world. The Supreme Court's decision launches the U.S. into a period of economic and political adjustment. Companies must unwind supply chains built to avoid tariffs, facing short-term challenges but long-term savings. Politically, the ruling deepens divisions. Will the administration accept the decision or escalate the conflict? The Republican Party faces a crossroads between free trade advocates and protectionists. The outcome will shape the party's identity and economic platform. Congress now bears responsibility for crafting new trade policy. Bipartisan cooperation is essential to address issues like China, intellectual property, and support for U.S. industries. The world is watching to see if lawmakers can rise to the challenge. America's economic leadership depends on what happens next. As the nation absorbs this historic ruling, the next steps are crucial. Expect gradual price drops on imported goods and a more stable business environment. Congress now holds the reins on trade policy, and their decisions will shape the economy for years. This ruling affects your wallet, your job, and your community. It's a powerful reminder of the importance of checks and balances in American democracy. Stay informed and engaged. Your voice matters as lawmakers debate the future. The story of America's role in the world is still being written. What happens next depends on all of us.